Did a killer use a crime novel as a blueprint for his crimes? Perhaps. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Jackie Galloway. Viewer discretion is advised. Real quick before we get started, of course, hello, my name is Mike. If you're new to the channel, I tell 3 true crime stories every week here on YouTube on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So feel free to subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. Listen to my dogs walk around on the ground. I also tell short-form true crime stories over on TikTok, where I'm more known. I have about 3 million-ish followers over there. I post at least 1 or 2 videos every single day. The link to that is in the link tree in the description of this video below. Ow, my neck. The link also pops up here at the beginning and also at the end of the video at some point. In that link tree, you will also find my merch store. We sell t-shirts and hoodies. We ship all over this wonderful world. So feel free to check that out if you want to. And then lastly, if there's a case you want me to cover, just email me. Email's listed below. Email me just the name of the case, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to the list. It's over 5,700 names right now, which you can actually see in the link tree. You can see the entire list. It's alphabetical, so scroll through it. If you can't find the name you want me to cover, then email me. I'll add it to it. I pick my cases at random. Can't promise you when I'll cover your case that you recommended, but I will get to it eventually at some point. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I don't know if you know what I mean. 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 Anyway, let's get into today's case. All right. Jacqueline Marie Galloway, who would go by Jackie to everyone, was born on December 4th, 1954. And she was born and raised in Minnesota. But by the time this story happens, Jackie has moved to the Sarasota, Florida area. Jackie, it sounds like, really preferred life in the sunny beach area. It was just where she was happiest. She was someone who enjoyed life. She lived life to the fullest. She was a social butterfly. She had a lot of friends. Everyone described Jackie as like your typical, girl's girl, right? She would get all dolled up. She would, put her cute little outfits on. She would get her nails done and she would go out and have fun. And she's 36 years old at the time, but she still enjoys just going out to a bar every once in a while, hanging out with friends. And she was just such a personable person that it was really, really easy to make friends with her. She was also considered an extremely helpful person. She wanted to help anyone she could. She, at the time that this story happens, she is actually caring for an older gentleman. Basically, she's helping him out with the things that he needs. His name is Harry Dean. And then in turn, Harry Dean would basically thank her for her help by lavishing her with things. He bought her a car one time, took her out to dinner and to lunch. And now Jackie also had a boyfriend at the time, and the boyfriend wasn't so keen on this idea of this other older guy buying things for Jackie, like cars, and taking her out to dinner. Obviously, the boyfriend got a little jealous, as probably one would. Jackie lived in her own little apartment there in Sarasota. So on June 12th, 1991, Harry Dean, the gentleman that, she was helping take care of, he drove over to her apartment, and his plan that day was he was going to take her out to lunch because, again, she was helping him. And so when he got there, he knocked on the door, but she didn't answer. But the door, I think, was, from what I understand, was partially open. And so he kind of just walked into the apartment. He's calling out for Jackie's name. She's not responding. He searches the entire apartment from end to end, and he cannot find her. But the thing is that her purse was just there. It was on her bed. With her purse was I think her ID was out on the bed, and some other belongings were there. Her apartment appeared to be in relatively, other than their purse being kind of on the bed, was in relatively neat and orderly condition the way she normally had it. There was no indications that anyone had broken in. There was no indications that there was a fight or a struggle that took place in the apartment. It was just Jackie was gone, but all of her stuff was there. Harry Dean, I think at first thought, well, what if, like, did the landlord make her upset and cause her to sort of to storm out and go somewhere? Because Jackie had a very bad relationship with the person she was renting from. He would, like, accuse her of running a brothel in her apartment, which was just insane. She wasn't doing that. And I guess the two of them would get into the occasional, like, spat. And when Harry got to the apartment that day and saw that, you know, her stuff was there and she wasn't, he kind of assumed, maybe they got into an argument and she needed to blow off some steam, and so she just took a walk somewhere. So he sat down on her couch and just waited for her. And then he waited for her. And he waited for her. And then he waited for her. She never came back. So I think at one point, one of her family members comes to the apartment looking for her as well. And, you know, they notice that Harry's in the apartment and he says, I came here to pick her up for lunch, but she wasn't here. The family member walks around and they notice that there's like food, like on the counter, like food that Jackie was in the middle of eating, it looked like. And it was just sort of sitting there with flies buzzing around it. The family member was immediately concerned because this wasn't like Jackie to just like pick up and leave her apartment like this, especially even if she was to storm off in like an argument with her landlord, she would at least take in her purse and her belongings, you know, her essential belongings with her, you know, in case she needed to go buy something or something. Her answering machine was just full of messages from people trying to call her, but not, you know, never getting an answer from her. Something was wrong. Jackie wasn't gone on her own. They felt like something happened to Jackie. So they contact police, and the Sarasota Police Department will arrive with, you know, pretty short amount of time. And this was before cell phones existed, so we couldn't be like pinging a cell phone tower to find out where she last was or anything. This was the era of like pagers and rotary phones, basically. So police, the first thing they do is they kind of go door to door. They ask if anyone had seen or heard anything. They're not getting much luck from that. They begin to call all of Jackie's friends. They speak to her family. They speak to people she may work with, go to school with, all of that. And nobody can really give them anything information-wise that's helpful. Of course, the first person they talk to is the guy that was at the apartment when her family arrived, Harry Dean. First of all, what kind of idiot would like do something nefarious to a person and then just chill in her apartment waiting for people to come look for her? Like, that wouldn't be the smartest thing in the world. Not to mention, Harry Dean was an elderly guy. He needed help with a lot of things. The odds of him, like, doing something to her and dumping her body or something was pretty slim. You know, they questioned him, they interviewed him, and they felt fairly confident that he didn't have anything to do with whatever may have happened to Jackie. Police then questioned Bruce Oberlin, who was Jackie's boyfriend at the time. They do learn that Bruce had a bit of a jealous streak in him, that he did not like this relationship that Jackie had with Harry Dean. He didn't like that Harry was spoiling her. It made him upset, made him a little angry at times. They also found out that Bruce was someone who was not only jealous of Harry Dean, but kind of jealous of Jackie's friends. She would go out all the time and she would hang out with friends all the time, and she didn't bring him every time. And he was like, well, why aren't you calling me to hang out all the time and stuff? She's like, well, I have a big circle of friends. I want to hang out with all of them. And sometimes you don't have to be involved. They look into him a lot and they try to discover like his alibi. I believe he said he was at work at the time she would have potentially gone missing. They confirm he was at work, and they get to a point, police do, where they just don't have any proof or evidence to say that he did anything to her. They also don't know where Jackie is, so they don't even know if she had done something, like maybe she had just ran away on her own or something like that. And so at that point, Bruce was kind of just sort of like a lingering person of interest, but not a suspect at that point. They're also at this point doing a massive search for Jackie. They're searching all throughout Sarasota. They have the police doing it. They have her friends and her family doing it. This isn't like a rural location. So like it's a highly populated, very dense area population. And so it's a little different of a search. You know, you don't have like this massive amount of like open, like or woods and forests and stuff like that. There are fields though. And as they are searching through the fields, I believe it is about 24 to 36 hours later, as they are searching through a field, and this is now, I think, 10 miles away from where Jackie lived, there is a very disturbing discovery. There is what appears to be a body wrapped very tightly in like a big white sheet with like pillowcases and stuff, I think, being used to cover this body. The body is tied up looks like professionally, with like professionally done knots. And it's wrapped up like, I'm showing some images, but I can't show too much, obviously, just because they can be a little graphic. But there is blood just like seeping through these sheets and pillowcases. Police are called to the scene. They get there with medical examiners. First and foremost, they kind of just examine the crime scene itself. Everything around the body is in perfectly neat condition. Like, it doesn't appear that a struggle had taken place in this field. There was no blood spatter everywhere. There wasn't any scuff marks. There was one single boot impression found within a couple of feet of the body. They didn't know if that belonged to potentially this person's killer or not, but it was there. But that was it. So they assumed from the get-go that this was just a dump site. The person just brought the body and chucked it and then left. But then they slowly kind of peel away the blanket and pull it off of the body, and it's a body of a young female. Because Florida is such a hot and humid climate, decomposition of human bodies in this environment at that time of year happens almost instantly. It's rapid. And this body was already in a state of decomposition to a point where they couldn't have a visual identity of who this was. However, dental records would eventually come back, and this was the body of 36-year-old Jackie Galloway. Jackie had been strangled to death, but before that, she was tortured. Her nails had been peeled off of her hand, and by the amount of blood that came out of her hand, she was alive when that happened. So her killer literally did that while she was alive and probably screaming. Her body was wrapped up in cords itself, and then the sheets were tied up with cords. They noticed that the type of knots that were used were unique. They were different. They hadn't really seen, I guess, these types of knots before. Now, this is a murder investigation. She's no longer missing. We found her. Now we need to know who killed her. They canvassed this area. They're looking for people near this field to see if they had seen or heard anything. They're questioning any businesses in the area, but they're not having any luck. So at this point, they have basically three suspects. They have Harry Dean, they have Bruce Oberlin, the boyfriend, and they also have the landlord. And throughout their investigation, they discovered had a very tumultuous relationship with Jackie. And all three men were questioned. All three men were polygraphed. All three men passed their polygraphs. All of them were, for the most part, alibied out. They were able to confirm with pretty good certainty that none of these three men could have possibly have killed her. Given the state of decomposition, they could still determine when she died. And like I said, this was within a day and a half or so of when she was last seen. And at that point, all three men were ruled out of having any connection with her murder. About a year prior to Jackie's murder, in the nearby Gainesville, Florida area, there was a spree of murders that occurred, and these became known as the Gainesville Ripper murders. And at the point where Jackie was killed, they had not, I don't think, caught the Gainesville Ripper. I believe they caught him within like a couple of months, though, of Jackie's murder, from what I can remember. I think I covered his case over on my TikTok page, which you can probably find in a compilation here on YouTube. But they thought, maybe this was the same guy. Maybe there was a lull in action, right? But the thing is he killed college students, and he killed them basically in groups. It wasn't like he was killing one person at a time type of thing. Now, eventually they would find the killer was Danny Rollins, and they were able to rule him out of having anything to do with Jackie Galloway's murder. But there was just that suspicion around that time. Around the time Jackie is murdered, a woman named Wanda, who was, I think, a nurse at the time, She had come home from her shift. It was late at night. She, got ready for bed. She got into bed, she fell asleep, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the night, she is literally awoken to a face just above her, a masked face, and pinning her down. And this man takes these ropes, these cords, and ties her to her bed. He is also holding a gigantic knife to her, threatening her, "Don't move, or I'm going to kill you." He spoke in this really low, just very monotone, creepy voice, basically telling her, "Don't do anything." The man would sexually assault her. But then after that, he basically left. After some time, before she wanted to make sure she was safe, she contacts police. And when police arrive, obviously they take her, they bring her to the hospital, and, she's not physically harmed in any other way other than the fact that, she was unfortunately sexually assaulted. But the police there noticed something right away. The ropes. The ropes were tied to her bed in a very familiar fashion. They were the identical knots that were found tied around Jackie Galloway's body. It was the same exact thing. Same type of rope, same style, same color, same everything. But the knot is what really brought it out, is like, this may be the same guy. This was also in the same general area of where Jackie Galloway lived. And so the police were like, well, this could be like a neighbor to theirs. This could be someone that lives really close by to both women. So they decided to essentially do a stakeout of this neighborhood, or they just always had an officer there, just always there looking for anything suspicious or strange. They noticed a man one night, and he pulled up in this car, a car that police had seen in the neighborhood before. When police noticed him this particular evening, he was out of his car. He was basically spotted peeping into a person's window. He was like up close like this to the glass looking inside. Well, a police officer was there and immediately said, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just looking for real estate." Okay. By the way, this is like at midnight. This is late at night. And they're like, "You're looking for real estate in the middle of the night by peeping into people's windows?" It's like, "Yeah, right? That's a thing people do." "No, sir, no." The man was 25-year-old John Waterman. He was a close neighbor to Jackie Galloway. So they arrested him that night for prowling, and they gave them the opportunity to look into this guy. They looked into his car. They found some things. They found these so on Jackie's body, they found like red fibers. His car also used like red upholstery, very similar to the fibers found on Jackie's body. In his trunk was a very long piece of rope. It was a white rope, the exact same style, color, and everything that was used to bind Jackie Galloway and used to bind the other victim. This was enough to get a warrant to search his home. When they search his home, they find more evidence. They find more of that exact same rope. They find a beige, whitish kind of bed sheet along with matching pillowcases. These were the exact same sheets and pillowcases that were found with Jackie Galloway's body. They found a bag, and in that bag had like gloves, it had more rope. It had essentially like a murder kit or a kidnapping kit. They also found a .45 caliber weapon in his home. They bring him in for questioning and say, "All right, what do you know about Jackie Galloway's murder? What do you know about the sexual assault of this other woman?" At first, he's like, "I have nothing to do with any of it. I didn't do any of it." The evidence they had against him was, for the most part, even though there was a lot of physical evidence, it was like circumstantial physical evidence. Like they couldn't say that there was the exact same rope used with the murderer because it's the same style, but they couldn't say that was the rope that was used. There wasn't any like blood evidence located ever. They had that one piece of fiber, but that's still circumstantial because you can't say with forensic certainty that it's the exact same fiber. There was no DNA left behind. There was no fingerprint evidence. There was virtually nothing physical that they could connect him to the murder and the sexual assault. But they were confident at this point that he was their guy. He's caught prowling in the same neighborhood where two women, one of them murdered, one of them sexually assaulted, lived. He has the exact same rope. They have that same fibers found in the car, found on Jackie's body. He had rope tied up on his property using the exact same knots that was found with Jackie, and that was found the same knot that was used to tie up the other victim. They also found in his house a copy of a book called Post-Mortem. As they're flipping through the pages of this book, it's a fictional crime novel, they notice passages that are almost identical to describing the way Jackie Galloway was killed. And then another passage in the book describing in detail the exact same way the other victim was sexually assaulted. Everything the victim told police in terms of like how he spoke, his low tone of voice, monotone, was literally described in the book in the same exact way. And this book appeared to have been flipped through a lot, as if he had used it a ton. They believed that he had been inspired to commit these murders in the exact same way the book described the crimes. It was a story that I think involved like 4 unsolved murders or something like that, kind of told from the perspective of the killer. And so it kind of, they thought maybe gave John Waterman like this thrill, like this, I'm going to be just like this guy. Again, it's circumstantial evidence, but it was a pretty telling piece of evidence for them. So he would end up being arrested and charged with the murder of Jackie Galloway and the sexual assault of the other victim. He decided at that point, even though there was no forensic evidence physical evidence to suggest he was definitely the guy, he still decided to plead guilty. And he would end up confessing. He said he did commit these crimes. He would not confess to the fact that the book inspired him. He wouldn't say that at all. The thing about this plea deal is he really basically just had to confess that he did it. He didn't really have to give them detail. And so even to this very day, nobody knows how this happened with Jackie. Nobody knows where he took her from. Nobody knows where he killed her, because there was no evidence in her apartment at all. I mean, they searched it top to bottom, side to side. There was nothing in her apartment to indicate a struggle. They didn't even find like evidence of the apartment being cleaned up after anything. It was spotless. It was in great condition. His house didn't show any evidence of blood or a struggle or signs of cleaning, a cleanup after a murder. So they have no idea where she was killed, and he doesn't have to say it. He just has to say that he did do it, which he did. So there is actually still a mysterious element to this. They also don't need to know his motive. He never said why exactly he did this and why he chose these victims. He was sentenced to just 45 years in prison in 1991, also with the option of being paroled. Unbelievably, in 2011, John Waterman was paroled and he was released from prison. He is mandated to attend a treatment facility for sexual offenders. He's obviously on the sex offender list for the rest of his life, but he's out there. This guy who committed this horrific murder and the sexual assault and probably other sexual assaults, if we're being honest here, he's out. He's out in the world, living his life. He was on this strict probation type thing, and while he was basically from 2011 to 2020, he was out and about, but he was essentially living in this treatment facility with a lot of restrictions. But by 2020, all of those restrictions were lifted, and John Waterman is now able to just freely go out into the entire world, wherever he wants to go. They said a psychological profile that he was ready to go. He was okay. Sure. From what I understand, he's currently living in Arcadia in Florida. So just be on the lookout. Watch out for that guy. And so Jackie Galloway was brutally murdered. This other victim was sexually assaulted in the middle of the night. So this murderer and sexual assaulter is just out there, living his life. Jackie Galloway doesn't get that. This other victim probably now has PTSD for the rest of her life. Probably afraid to go to bed at night, because you never know. Is that justice? He's out there alive and well, able to do whatever he wants. Jackie can't do that. She's buried. She's gone forever. Jackie Galloway got justice, but not complete justice. Complete justice would be him dying in a prison cell. But I guess in some way the legal system worked, right? It may not have worked the way we wanted it to, but it worked. But did Jackie Galloway truly get the justice she rightfully deserved? But that is it for this case. True crime, Maroony Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. Hope you found it interesting. As usual, subscribe, give this video a like, go follow me on TikTok, and other things. I don't know. To wrap this video up, do you remember what this is? This is called a television guide. The guide to television shows. This would tell you when your favorite shows were on. I was in this TV guide, folks. Me. Let me show you. See this little cherubic little fat boy? That's me. Children's Hospital. I lived in the hospital for the first 2 years of my life. That's me. Sitting on the weatherman's lap. Yeah, I'm famous, basically. I'm famous. I did not get to meet Sybil Shepherd, but I was in her book. Where am I going with this? Anyway, just wanted to share. Hey, maybe in future videos, I can end videos by looking up what was on television and discussing and reading from the book. Reading from the book. The great book. This is the book that shaped my life. Did it shape your lives? Look it. This guy wants you to light his Lucky. This attractive gentleman wants you to have a cigarette. Okay? You can do this back in the day. You can advertise cigarettes like this. Just whenever you wanted to. Okay? Anyway. They don't make these anymore. You can just look on your phone when things are on. You can ask your Siri or your Alexa or whatever. Anyway. Bye.